Hello, everyone. We are just going to bring in my very special guest today. We actually had to talk to each other this morning at 7 a.m. To decide whether or not we were going to do this interview after all, because of the heaviness that this evening, that yesterday evening, that this morning has carried, not just for us as activists and truth tellers, but also as a nation. And we knew how heavy and heavy-hearted people are today, have been yesterday, and this will carry on for a very, very long time. Brianna and I really had to have a heart-to-heart this morning to think about whether or not we could do this interview, and decided it was way too important, and the message was ever more important today than it would have been 2 days ago. There's a reason that we were originally supposed to do this interview on Monday. There's a reason that God, the universe, whatever it is you want to say it is, there's a reason that it postponed this interview to this afternoon. And there is really no other guest I can imagine that would be more important right now to have on this show. Hello, my beautiful friend.
Hello, my beautiful friend.
I
How are
just
you?
adore you. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's so good to see
And
your face.
it's so nice to see you too. I'm going to pull in Dr. Tempany. She probably won't come on camera, but she felt this was important enough to share with her audience too. So we're going to pull her in. So we won't see these two squares, but we'll see three, and see how that goes. Give me 1 second here. I'll invite. I was just saying before you came on, Brianna, that you and I had a conversation early in the morning, and we were really trying to decide whether or not we were going to have this conversation, this interview today. And it weighed on both of our hearts, obviously. I'm sure you had a sleepless night like many of us did. And I thought about it. There's a reason that our interview got postponed. We were supposed to meet on Monday, and there, whatever you want to call it, universe, God, whatever it is that pushed this interview to today, I felt very strongly that we had to have this discussion. It's so important. I think there's so many people mourning, asking questions, wanting to be a part of a conversation that's a little bit closer than where they stand, and there's so much confusion. So before I start that, I did prepare a little something. This is a very different conversation than Brianna and I were going to have. There's a little bit of a different plan, but nonetheless, I think extremely important. And I had to write this so that I wouldn't cry, because I knew if I started to say it just from me, I would probably cry. So I'm going to, excuse me while I read this, because I do think it's important to let you guys know why we're here today. So before we begin, I need to pause and acknowledge the devastating reality we're facing as a nation. The murder of Charlie Kirk has shaken us all. We are grieving the loss of a courageous leader, a husband, and a friend to so many. Our hearts are with his family in this hour of unimaginable pain. And yet, in this grief, there's also a piercing clarity. Charlie's death has stripped away any illusion that this is simply a battle of words or ideas. We are in a war, not with tanks and guns, but with lies, corruption, and the machinery of tyranny. And the stakes are not abstract. They are life and death. Every time one of us steps out into a stage, speaks into a microphone, or refuses to bow to the agenda, we step into a battlefield knowing there are real daggers pointed at us. Charlie's murder proves that in many, many ways that many of us have long felt the same. The threats we face are not imagined, they are real. But here's where our courage comes from. We may not wear military helmets or carry rifles, but we put on the armor of God. We walk forward in faith, holding the shield of truth, knowing that God himself has said to us over and over again, do not fear. That is why today's conversation with Brianna Ladapo is so significant and so important to me. This really, really hits home. Not only is she a friend, but a leader for all of us. Her husband, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, just made medical history last week by ending all vaccine mandates in Florida. That one act of courage shifted the landscape of medical freedom in the entire country. But behind the headlines and the applause, there's a family, a wife, children, and a home, shouldering the weight of that decision. So I want to begin not with the politician, which I could have probably done first, but with the woman who has walked beside him, Brianna. She's not only the wife of Florida's Surgeon General, she is a healer, a teacher, an author of Emerging from the Darkness, a book about reclaiming health, sovereignty, and courage. She knows firsthand what it means to see the writing on the wall, to step out in faith, and to hold steady when the daggers are flying. So today, with heavy, heavy hearts for the loss of Charlie, but with unshaken resolve to keep moving forward, I invite into this conversation Brianna Ladapo and all of you. Brianna is a mom, a woman of faith, and a voice of courage in this defining moment for the nation. That was kind of hard to read, actually.
Yes. I'm realizing I should have worn waterproof mascara because I thought I was going to hold it together, but this is such a raw moment. Forgive me. Thank
No,
you for that
yeah.
incredible intro. Wow, 5 seconds.
I know
I
I
didn't
choose
make it
not to
five
mix this. We're
seconds.
mixes.
Well, you know, it crossed my mind this morning, just what you said about the fact that we were supposed to speak earlier this week. And for a variety of reasons, it just didn't work out. And of course, we could not have known what was
No,
before us, what was coming. And when we talked this morning about whether or not it was appropriate to have this conversation, I think we both felt like not only is it appropriate, it's necessary because we all know theoretically what we're risking by standing for freedom and liberty and a God-centered world. But unfortunately, every now and then we get an all too real reminder of what it really looks like to go up against the darkness. And I'd like to think we are all willing to make that sacrifice if necessary. But of course, you just pray to God that never comes to pass. Um, I did not sleep last night. I'm sure none of us did. All I
no.
could think about were Charlie's wife and his kids. And, I look into the little faces of my own kids, my sweethearts. And I actually wrote about this morning because I woke up with this heavy on my heart. Um, I understand why so many people, so many of us even, so many activists, so many warriors, so many passionate crusaders are suddenly stunned or scared into silence and they don't want to take the risk. I've gotten a lot of phone calls from a lot of dear friends in the last 18 hours. And a lot of them were essentially asking, should we back down? Should we be quiet? Is it worth it? Is it worth the risk that our children won't have a parent tomorrow? And while I completely understand that sentiment, I believe it is because those precious little faces, those beautiful kids that look up to us, they're the reason we're doing this, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We don't we don't want to leave them a world that is dominated by darkness and depravity. I can't do that. um, I sincerely hope we don't have another tragedy like this, but the truth is we might. We might. We are going up against a very dark, very desperate entity who is, in fact, they're increasingly desperate. They're losing. They're losing their resources. They're becoming decentralized. People are waking up. Information is coming into the light. This is what we've all worked for, and it's a wonderful thing. But it's a dangerous time, to be perfectly frank. But the last thing we should do is be silent or make ourselves small. That is precisely what they were hoping to accomplish by murdering Charlie. And I know he, of all people, would never want us to hide. He never did
No,
that. Um, I have so much admiration for Charlie. And I will plainly say, we did not always agree. There are a lot of things that we were just not aligned on. But the one thing that always impressed me about Charlie is his heart. I mean, his energy was beautiful. You could see that he was on a mission from God to do what he thought was right. And in a world where we have college syllabi coming with trigger warnings and social media cultivating this fear of having a conversation about tough topics, and a whole generation of kids who are being taught that if something makes you uncomfortable, oh, that's okay, you just run away. People don't even know how to face it anymore. You had Charlie out there going from school to school, opening the conversation, listening to people who wildly disagreed, and actually engaging in civic discourse. That's what we need, and it's the last thing the darkness wants. I've had a boxing coach for years. He's very dear to me. He's like family, but he grew up in Brazil under an authoritarian regime many years ago. And early on in COVID, we would chat about what we were seeing and what was going on. And he told me a story that when he was in grade school, they passed a law that you could, even as a child, right? These are kids we're talking about. You were only allowed to talk to one other person at a
Oh my
time.
God.
So if you congregated after class with three or four of your friends, you'd be arrested.
Oh my God.
And it took me, I know, I was like, these are children. But then I realized when we come together and share our ideas, we profoundly expand our light. We become powerful. When we talk to each other, we bring our different perspectives to the table. We start recognizing things that don't make sense or are unjust, and we push back. And they don't want us to do that. They don't want us talking to each other. That's why they've engendered all this nonsense and divisiveness when really, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We have essentially the same interests, but people have been so hijacked by
Yeah,
all this dark messaging. And of course, it often plays right into trauma that is unhealed in those people too, right? So that exacerbates everything. And then you can't have a civil conversation. And Charlie, for that reason, and others, but he was a hero. I was always so proud of how he put himself out there. He never gave up. He always stood behind his ideals. And agree or disagree with his perspective, the way he dedicated his life to serving humanity and making the world a better place was to be admired.
I agree. And, I want to go back to something that you had said, which was, he was walking in his faith and he was doing what he felt was right by God and what his mission was, not going out there and killing people, not going out there and denying speech. He was not going out there and shutting people down in a sense where they didn't have a voice. He actually gave them a voice. He gave them a platform. He gave them a microphone. He did the opposite of what we think of when we think about, religious crusades back in the olden days, or some of the extremists that we see today. It's like, if you don't believe what I believe, that's it. We're going to hang you, right? Off with your head and all of that. Because it happened. I mean, look what happened with the Spaniards and the Portuguese and all of that, takeovers over the Catholic religion. I mean, this goes back into history, but this is not what he was doing. He was not saying, well, if you don't believe what I believe, we're going to hang you. He was giving them a microphone and said, prove me wrong. Just prove me wrong. And if you can have the conversation, I mean, he didn't say, only the weakest can come up and have a microphone. Please, that's not even a challenge. Bring your brightest person and let us have an open discussion, which, Brianna, this is all we've ever asked. Going back to when this started, even before all the COVID stuff, going back into 2018, 2019, what do we ask? We asked for people to come forward. Let's have an open discussion. Let's have a debate if you want to or not. We can just make it so that it's just you present your evidence and we present ours. Let's have an open conversation. And please let the people hear it. Why can't we have a conversation? And that's what always seems to get shut down when it's people who are on our side of the fence trying to bring forward truth, trying to look at real evidence, trying to look at a different, perspective than the common narrative. I don't even want to see regular narrative. It's not regular. We should not normalize any of that. It's like, let's go back to what happened last week. And I feel like Things like this always happen to distract whatever whatever energies you want to say created it, or planned it, physical or non-physical. Okay, look at the incredible things that happened last week. There was so much to talk about. When I brought Susan Sweeten on from Freedom Health Connects, excuse me, we didn't have enough time to get through all of the things that had happened, and all the things that pointed to massive celebrations, things that, Dr. Tempany has been in tears for the last 2 days ever since this happened with Charlie, because she's like, you know, 25 years I've been doing this, 25 years that we've been screaming from the rooftops. Never before has it been in so much light as it has been in the last 5. So 25 years, 5 of them, massive headlines, right? But coming forth to this has been so impactful, so damaging in a time when we've been celebrating. Do you see the distraction? It is a common distraction. It happens all the time. Something comes in, smacks everybody, because now everybody's looking over here and they're distracted from all the wins of last week. They're distracted from the hearing with Aaron Siri this week. They're distracted from, Ron Johnson, everything that was said. It's distraction, in the most horrible, horrible way. And it just goes to show that it doesn't matter to them who they take out.
No, no. And like you said, distraction, misdirection, obfuscation, these have always been tools of the devil. They're great at that. And increasingly, I'm starting to believe it's the only tool they have left. The hiding, the violence. There's little of substance they can do because the cat's out of the bag. I mean, there's no going back. For anyone still wondering, the end of the story is written. The light wins. It might be a bumpy road, and it might take a minute, but we're not going to devolve, right? We're not going
Yeah.
to go backward in our elevation of consciousness. There's only one direction we
Yep.
can go now. So at this point, every action they take is simply delaying the inevitable, which is why I had a conversation with my husband last night, just about what has happened and where we go from here. And we landed in the same place, which is that, where we go, we hit him again. We double
Yeah,
down and we go back out there and we keep doing what we're doing, only louder, stronger, because they want to kill our spirit.
that's
And that is
right.
the one thing that they can never take from us. They cannot take that human resiliency and that compassion and that empathy. And I think it frustrates them because they don't understand it. They don't have those
No,
things. So we
they
have to
don't have
lean
those
on
things.
love. Yeah,
They don't
even
have
in the
that. They don't have the ability to dig deep into what is right and just. If you see some of the people that were celebrating Charlie's death, I mean, get away from the politics, not the politics, not the, forget about all of that. Everyday people, everyday you and me's celebrating someone's murder. Where have we come as a nation that we celebrate the death of a husband and a father and a leader, someone that millions of people look up to? Where do you celebrate that? Even if it was a homeless person living in a subway, they celebrated this man's death. Where are we at it as a nation? It's really disgusting. And you've done a lot of work with this, healing and internal being. Um, what do you think is happening here?
Well, I think that whatever you want to call them, the darkness, the shadow, they have spent generations creating trauma for everyday people, right? All kinds of trauma. And at this point, I mean, there's not a person walking the earth who not only has their own trauma, but at least 7 generations of intergenerational trauma coming in with them. And most people at present don't necessarily have the tools, the knowledge, the wherewithal, or the desire to really take on that healing journey because it's not easy, right? All of us know that. We have done it. It's an ongoing thing. That's a moving target. We're always
It
doing it.
is
There are practices I do
work
every
in
single day.
progress.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Oh no. Are you frozen? I think you're frozen. Am I frozen or are you frozen? Let me see. Are we both frozen, or is it just Brianna?
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Did I lose you?
okay, you're back. There we go.
Oh man, sorry about that. A
Froze
call
there for
came
a
through and
second.
I'm new to Instagram Live, so I was just chatting away. What was the last thing you heard? Sorry.
Oh, it's okay, sorry. We were talking about like what is actually happening here, and you said that people are maybe not ready or able to get to where they need to be to properly internalize what's happening.
Thank you. So the problem with unhealed trauma is that it completely changes the way you interact with the world. It affects how you show up in your family, with, with your husband, with your wife, with your kids, with your friends, with your job, with the news, anyone else's trauma. Everything becomes a trigger. And I don't use that word in the trite way. It has become overused in our
Right.
society
Right.
at all. I mean, really and truly, if you have an unhealed wound and then you encounter someone else with a similar frequency or vibration, it's going to trigger that unhealed trauma for you. And so I almost have to hand it to them. The bad guys are great at this. They
Yeah.
create the trauma, and then once they have a nice unhealed raw nerve of a population walking around, they level you with this narrative, right? They push it into your face. They do all this virtue signaling, and it's all lies, right? It's all wildly out of alignment and doesn't make any logical sense. But when you're hurting, you can't think clearly, right? When you're out of alignment, you don't have divine clarity. That's the reason they even do all of that. So right now, oh, and one other thing. Um, Forgive me for saying so, but I feel like I have to. Um, I have seen too many people in my life who are very dear to me and have been for decades that took that jab and completely changed personalities. And I swear their empathy is gone. It's as if it has severed their connection with source. Now, not everybody, not at all. I think there are wild variations between the batches that were out there and how they were dispersed, but that's another conversation. But a lot of people that I have known for 20 or 30 years to be lovely and kind and caring and empathetic and beautiful, after they got that shot, sometimes two or three, it's as if their humanity was simply cut off and they
Um,
don't feel things anymore. And so, all these things combined really allow people, when they're faced with something like the obvious political assassination of a young man with a family, there's no empathy. Like that typical human response that we all should have just by virtue of being alive and sharing sharing a planet, it's not there. It's so easy for them to create separation between themselves and what they're seeing or experiencing because the experience would be too painful and they haven't done the work that would be necessary to actually be able to stand in that experience with that person or that family or that population or whatever it is. When you see suffering, the human experience is to stand there, hold the space, right? Offer love, offer comfort, or at the very least, not contribute to their suffering. But these people are suffering, and a lot of them are not aware of it. So they are, I think, unconsciously trying to perpetuate that suffering and their own misery on other people. And I pray all the time for mass healing. That's it's why we all do what we do, because I think that's the only way that a lot of these people are going to find peace and their way out of this. And I've had to come to terms with the fact that not everyone is going to make that choice in this life. And that's okay. We all have our journeys. But it is very difficult to watch the apathy and the vitriol and just the really dark sentiments out there. Like, who cares if you agree with them? What does that have to do with the fact that a young life is snuffed out yesterday? So
yep.
we have to bring those who still have access to their compassion back to their hearts.
That's really, really deep. Thank you. And so true. And I'm going to put this out there because I want people to realize this happened to Charlie. This could have happened to Joe last week.
Yeah.
This could have happened to Dr. T every time she stepped on a stage. I cannot tell you how many times we get death threats. People show
Same.
up at her clinic, right? They show up at her clinic, they call, they leave messages. Some of these, we delete them before she can even hear them. But if you heard some of them, they were so disgusting that you really sit back and think, we have a very big problem with mental illness in our country.
Oh, yeah.
Because you cannot say those things without being deeply, deeply damaged. You don't say things like that. So if we're getting death threats, I could only imagine what your conversations, and I want to kind of get into that a little bit because I think it's important for people to understand because, sitting back here, this is what we hear often, okay? This isn't happening fast enough. Why did it take 2 years to do this? Why isn't he speaking louder and about this? Why hasn't he already eliminated this other thing? Guys, understand how much is happening in the background in order to get any of us to the point. I mean, Dr. Timpani could say it because she's been saying it for 25 years. She's also not in politics. She's also not trying to convince Congress and governors and presidents. Well, she is, but she's not in the politician's place to try and do this coming forward to a public. I come from a different place, Brianna. I come from a music industry. In my past life, I should say, my previous life, there are certain things you have to think about before you say something publicly. And it's crazy to have that conversation. I had this conversation with myself a few years ago when I decided to take an interview, a very public interview with people of my music career, where I wanted to come out in truth because I was trying to help people to see it, and I was hoping I could use my voice to try to bring people in. And it was a very divided audience. Some people thought I was crazy, and some people praised what I was saying because they finally heard somebody say it. But the point is, I had to make a decision of whether I was going to tell the truth and try to help, or whether I wanted to try and save my music career. Which one was it going to be? And I decided to tell the truth. And I think, and people called me and they said, are you crazy? You have a child, you have a family, you could be putting people at risk. And I said, that's exactly why I'm doing this. What kind of mother would I be if I looked back in 20 years and my child said to me, Mom, what did you do when that was happening? Am I going to say I conformed? Am I going to say I complied? Am I going to say that I hid? Am I going to say that I just went into a cave, just pretend, come out, and I believe what I believe, but let's not let anybody know? Or was I going to fight so that she wouldn't have to one day? Sorry.
Absolutely.
And I think that's true of so many of us. Again, another reason I wanted to have you on here, because we hear from the frontliners. We hear from your husband, the amazing Dr. Joe Ladapo. For anybody who's just joining us here, Brianna is the wife of Florida's Surgeon General, who really went out on a massive limb last week when he and Governor DeSantis removed all vaccine mandates in the state of Florida. And I'm choking now because, this was not a one-day decision. This was not we're going to do this next week. This took a very long time. And it took a lot of education, because Joe doesn't just do something because, that sounds like a really good thing. No, like, I watched him for the last 2 years research and make sure of these decisions he's making. He did not take it lightly. He did not take it just because we said so. He did not take it just because Dr. Tenpenny wanted to send him 1 million educational pieces. He wanted to make sure it was 100% the right thing to do, and it took him this long to do it, and God bless him for it. I'm honored that he listened, that he was willing to learn, that he was willing to hear the people's screams and cries. This wasn't just please and, oh my gosh, this would be a really good idea. These were parents screaming and crying and expressing the damages their children have had to face, and the level of slavery and lack of freedom that any kind of mandate brings. By all means, if you want to go ahead and poison your family, who am I to decide that for you? I could say that people drinking Coke are poisoning their family. You can have very different perspectives about this. This is a very personal decision. I don't think it should be even on the table. That's just me, because I know the science behind it. That's just me. But again, very personal decision on what you're going to do, but don't make it for everybody else. And Joe did that. Joe stepped in and said, and it's why I hate all the criticizers of him. People have come up and really criticized him to say, you know, okay, well, how dare I saw a post, Brianna, the other day. I had to chuckle. They were like, "Her, if you love your children, hurry up and get them out of Florida." It's like, what? No, told you couldn't go do it yourself. Go if that's your choice and you want to do it. You want to stick, 13,000 micrograms of aluminum into your children by the time they're 18. Hey, that's like I'm going to stay out of that personal decision. But do not make it for me, and that's the point. Sorry. Oh, my rant is over.
Oh, you're, we're right about everything you said. Absolutely. Um, it's so clear to me that it is no one's right to tell another sovereign soul what to put in their bodies or their children's bodies. That truly, a part of me couldn't even believe that we had to say it. And then
Exactly.
it's just like, isn't that obvious? Isn't that one of those things that's just as clear as anything? Like, we don't hurt
Yep.
children, period. We don't force people to put stuff in their bodies, period. Like, why is it necessary that we say this? And, ever since we got here and started making trouble, um, I have been
I love you,
surprised.
troublemaker.
I've been really surprised at some things that I thought would create huge reverberation and big trouble, and then there were crickets. And then other things that I thought were so obvious that people would barely notice, and then there's some kind of tidal wave. And Joe and I were like, huh, look at that. So there are things that we have been working on for a very long time. And for a moment, I will address the people who, because there are always people who are, oh, it's about time, little late, da da da
Right.
da. To those people, while I understand, especially for those who have been personally injured, have people they love who've been personally injured, we have a vaccine injured child. I get it. But these things do not happen overnight for several reasons. One of those reasons is that for, in my personal opinion, thousands of years, there has been a collective darkness energetically deliberately squashing the truth. It has been misleading the collective. It has hijacked the human consciousness, human empathy, human compassion. And there was a really great article the other day by Toby Rogers, who is brilliant. Um, he called the phenomenon epistemic capture, which is more than regulatory capture, right? It's where literally every single aspect of a system is bought, paid for, and controlled. So it's not just the medical schools and the curriculum. It's not just the textbooks that are written by professors with a conflict of interest. It's not just that most of these schools own stock in big pharma. It's not that 40% estimated of the white papers out there in journals are actually being ghostwritten by big pharma. He just really laid it out. It's capture. It means that every single bit of this is controlled. So by the time data, I'm using air quotes, is released to the
Mhm.
public, there's very little chance that it's authentic because that doesn't serve the powers that be, right? I mean, you always have to ask, what's the source? And who benefits from this? Like, who is benefiting from this narrative, this decision, this
Exactly.
line of questioning? So we are literally up against years and years and years of dark ideology that has been so engendered in every system we have that it's to say it's an uphill battle would be an absurd understatement. And we are working around the clock. We have been since the moment we got here, since
I
before
know
that,
you have.
actually. And I just want people to know that it's not like we're sitting on the couch eating bonbons over here. We are working always, always. And he and I, as a team, we are always in conversation. We are always strategizing about what comes next. And another piece of this is what you mentioned. One of the things I love about my husband is that he is not swayed by anyone else's opinion
Nope.
ever. Ever. He is only swayed by hard fact that he has researched himself and his own moral judgment. And that's what to me makes him an amazing leader. I love that. This
Absolutely.
man cannot be bought, blackmailed, bullied, bribed. It'll never happen because he doesn't care.
He's
He's
not
going to do what
swayed by
he
those
thinks is right.
things.
No, he
No.
is not impressed by any of the usual nonsense that they use to basically push politicians or leaders into a corner so they can control them. That's why they hate him so much. He
So
is
they
just
can't control
not.
them.
Yeah, because he's not impressed by any of that. That's never going to work with him.
He's not a
He
money
will make
guy.
up
He
his
doesn't care
own
about
mind.
me. He
Mm-mm.
like he doesn't care. No,
Nope.
he's like, I'll never forget. I'll never
Nope.
forget when my mom first met him, Brianna. That she's so cute. She literally, walks into Susan's house and she sits down beside him. Has no idea who he is, of course, right? So she sits down beside him and she's just talking to him like a grandma, talking to him about the kids. They're having a conversation about the kids, and they're having an everyday conversation, nothing political, nothing medical, just an everyday conversation. And I looked over. You and I were chatting, and I looked over and I'm like, that is that's so sweet. Like he is just such a real everyday, I want to say everyday American. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyday human.
Yeah.
Just talking to my mom about the kids. Like so cute. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, put that out there for people to realize like this was a real, like real human being. And these are, again, coming back to the conversations that you guys have had late at night, midnight talks. Um, you know, having us probably call you all the time, guys, you gotta hear this, what's next, and sending you information and really trying to you know, be helpful. Be helpful because we all need to have proper sources of information.
Yeah.
Um, but the conversations that you guys have as a team, these are the things that I don't know people if people really realize, or maybe they wonder what's happening, who's helping those decisions. He's not just walking into that office and having a conversation with DeSantis and saying, yeah, let's think this is a really good political decision. Like these are really thought out questions. And you know, now I want to kind of think about Brianna. I was worried about you last week. I was worried in a way of like, oh my gosh, please, dear God, please protect them, because this was huge. It was huge, and you have already said, you looked at your little kids and you're like, what am I doing? Is this the right thing to do? Like, am I putting them at risk? Am I putting myself at risk? My husband at risk? And I think every single one of us makes that decision when we step out here.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us are afraid to die. We know where we're going. What we're afraid of is who we leave behind. That's what
Yeah.
we're afraid of, leaving that behind, and how are they going to survive and how are they going to fight for themselves and how are they going to get to the next level, and who might come after them. Like we're born protectors. And so when you were having that conversation with Joe, what was that final, we got to do this? Like what was the final straw of we can't do this anymore?
Oh, that's a good question. It was a long conversation because both of us were dealing with a lot of emotions on a lot of different levels. And of course, the parent level is the predominant level when you have children. That's
Yeah,
just ever present. And Joe teases me. He said I came out fearless. Because
you
bad
did.
guys don't bother me. Thank you. You can put me in front of any of these dark dudes and I'm fine. In fact, I'm happy. This gets me out of bed in the morning. I feel like, you know what? Not today, Satan. But when it comes to my babies, and that includes my husband, my sweethearts, that's a different story. And it's very hard, I think, for the both of us to reconcile that mama bear, papa bear instinct, that instinct to protect your partner. And he's so much more than that. Joe's my soulmate, and I know that I'm his, and I know that we contracted to do this together. We are here for this reason, for this mission at this time. And that's what we keep coming back to because as much as it is scary and painful sometimes to even imagine what it would be like to be in the shoes of Charlie's widow today, we would be we would be failures if we gave up, silenced ourselves, and allowed our children to inherit this mess. Because the truth is, the darkness will push this as far as we let them. And so, even if we start playing it small, all of a sudden today, as a response to what happened to poor Charlie, beautiful soul, the problem doesn't go away, right? So, what, we pass it on to the next generation and let it be their problem? And as many of you probably know, I believe that we are an infinite soul having a temporary physical experience. I know this is not the first time I have fought this fight, but I'd like it to be the last. So I'm not going anywhere until this is over. And my husband feels the same way. So that's where we landed We love our children and each other more than anything. But really, this is about humanity. And if we don't solve this, it gets passed forward for someone else to solve. And I can't live with that. And neither can he. I don't know what we'd be doing here if we just played it safe or quiet, bide our time till we die. What's the point? I don't see what's honorable about that. We came to fight. And more than that, really, we came to create a new world. I'd like to see heaven on earth, as above, so below, before I shuffle
Yeah.
off this mortal coil yet again. So I'm not going anywhere. Neither is he. And we have three kids, and our eldest, he's old enough now. He just turned 12. He's 6'1". He looks
Oh
17.
my
It's crazy.
gosh, already.
I know. I have to ask him to get dishes. Like, could you reach that for me?
So cute.
um, he's getting old enough to really start understanding what we do, the gravity of the mission that we are on, and what's at stake. And yesterday, he could tell that I was very sad, not okay. And he kept asking me about it, and I was trying to keep it together in front of my little ones because they're too little for this conversation. But finally, my sweet boy pulled me aside and said, "Mom, you know that I'm here for you, right? You can tell me anything."
Oh,
I said, "I know
such a
that
sweetheart.
he is. He's so beautiful." He said, "I know you don't ever want to put a burden on me." He said, "But you've been carrying my burdens forever, so let me help you." And I thought, I still didn't tell him, by the way. I told him a little bit. But the fact that he was able to go there and drop into that level of empathy as a 12-year-old boy really helped just renew my hope and that love for humanity. That, like, that's what it's about right there. That level of love, that level of empathy for other people, that level of responsibility for the collective, for the group, because there's a lot of selfishness out there. There's a lot of me, only concerned about how it affects me. And so when I see these kids, and I feel like all of our kids have this in common, it's so beautiful. It's like they came in with that consciousness. They care about the collective, about humanity. They understand the concept of oneness consciousness. They understand that this separation, this idea of us versus them, is an illusion.
It is an
And so
illusion.
I see that, and I know we are fighting the right fight, and that ultimately it's all going to work out beautifully because I think we all came to knock down the dragons. We came to slay the dragons and pave the way, but our children came to rebuild. They came to create that new world that we've worked so hard for. So, no matter what the darkness wants to try, we are not giving up. We're not leaving. We will not be scared into silence. As a matter of fact, if anything, I think we have more resolve than ever to get where we need to go as quickly as possible because the future of humanity depends on it.
100%. I love that. Oh my gosh, what a great ending to this interview. You know, it's funny because I was preparing for this interview on Monday, I have 3 pages of questions that I had done for us. We didn't get to any of them because, of course, what happened, but I knew we were just going to have a conversation today and we needed it. And I hope that anybody listening here, I hope this somehow, if it eased your pain, if it gave you more drive, if it gave you perspective, if it gave you some peace, if it gave you a realization that you are not alone. We're all feeling the same kind of pain in a unified way, but also the strength of it. Because like Brianna said, and Charlie would have said the exact same thing. Oh yeah, we're gonna get stronger. Now we get stronger. You kind of feel like that's what he's saying right now. And you know, the reason they knocked him out of the game here was because he was effective. And I think that Dr. Ladapo, your husband, my friend Joe, he is effective, but you know, he is staying in the game. And I hope that, you know, he rises right to the top because we need him in a even much higher capacity. You know, I there was a couple of things that I wrote down that I do want to say. If I could find it now, because I was like, oh my gosh, I missed that, and I missed that, and I missed that. But you know, here it is. There's one thing here that I want to be able to to make sure I say. And I heard RFK Jr. say this the other day. And then Dr. Tempany wrote me this morning. She goes, "Did you realize he actually quoted his father?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." So I'm going to read this to you. He said, "Progress requires change, and change has enemies."
Wow.
And I was
Absolutely.
like, "Oh my gosh, he did quote his father." He didn't say he quoted his father. He didn't say a single word about that. He just said it. And I know that he quoted, during his hearing, he quoted several things from the Bible, things that he was using, I guess, to help himself in getting through the conversation that he was having to have. And he realized that he was fighting powers and principalities, not just flesh and bone here. Um, it's a huge realization. This is something else that I want to say. This is Charlie's words. Charlie himself said this: "I'm far more interested in what God wants of me than what I want from God." He did
Mhm.
not live in fear, and he taught us all to do the same. I think he's probably, again, like you said, you may not have agreed with everything he said, but you can agree to this. He had no fear in what he wanted to say, and he wanted you to feel the same way, no matter which side you stood on. But stand on that side with respect for each other, with love for each other, for the ability to listen to each other, and to come with an open heart, an open mind, a willingness to learn and move forward, whatever that direction is. But you better come with a strong debate. So thank you so much, Brianna. Is there anything that you would like to share with the people? I know that Erica probably can't speak yet. I have like this knot in my throat. Like I feel like there's people that want to speak and they can't. But can you be that voice? You're standing in that exact position that she was standing in last week, and this week and yesterday, standing behind her husband, beside her husband, because we were going to bring you back on to talk about your degree. You have a Harvard degree. You have a huge accomplishment that happened just in May that we didn't even get to talk about. So please come back and talk about these accomplishments. And we need to come back and talk about what happened last week when everything kind of calms down a minute. Um, I think the people need to hear from someone like you.
Thank you. Well, I would say no matter what happens, no matter what is to come, no matter how dark things seem, the reason there's so much turmoil in the world right now is because we are right over target. We are on the right path. They are violent because they are scared. And that means we have to hold the course. And there are people who've called me crazy for using those words. And they, well, what about your husband? What about your family? They would say the same thing. We all understand the stakes. We all understand what the possible cost is of being out in front of this and talking about it and being a public figure. And believe me, we never asked for this. We are the last two people on planet Earth who ever wanted any kind of fame,
I can't
who would
even
have been
imagine.
very happy just to fade away in obscurity in a cabin together somewhere. But when things go this wrong, and there's this much obvious injustice, and the world is completely out of integrity, you have to act, no matter what the cost, because I promise you, the cost of not acting is always greater. And that affects the entire collective. And we're quite literally looking down the barrel of losing humanity altogether. Now, that's not going to happen. I am certain of that. But the reason it's not going to happen is because enough people with enough belief and faith in the divine, faith in humanity, faith in each other, decided to step up and say, nope, not happening, not on my watch. And that's what it takes. If we were to continue sitting by silently, things would absolutely get worse. There's no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind. The the end goal of, I always struggle with what to call them. Regime,
Them.
cabal. I usually
They.
just go with dark. Yeah, the
Okay,
bad
they.
guys.
But we
They.
don't know what we're talking about.
But their ultimate goal was to rob humanity
Yes.
entirely of their consciousness, their compassion, their empathy, their control, their ability to think critically, their ability to produce. And the thing about humans that actually makes them special is that we are wildly creative beings. And I don't say that lightly, even though, so Joe and I are of deep, deep faith, but not necessarily religion, not any particular belief system. And that's also another conversation. For anyone who's read our books, they know what the reasons for that are. But we are such a family of faith. But, oh dear, I just lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere. What did I say?
I was so
Oh,
deeply listening to
forgive me.
to your
This is what
conversation.
happens when you don't sleep. Oh man, I was trucking. Anyway, well, I
We were
think
talking
I'd
about your
like,
deep faith. We were talking about where you like what you pull from, where humanity is going, and how we're not going to lose humanity because
oh,
you know.
thank you. Thank you. Sorry. So the goal of the darkness is to really separate us from that which makes us human. And oh, that's what I was going to say. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So while I don't we don't necessarily subscribe to one particular set of dogma, if you will, we are deeply spiritual. But one of the things I do think a lot of the versions of the Bible, and really many religious manuscripts around the world get right is that we are created in God's image. And to me, a big part of what that means is that we are intended to create, to elevate our light, to create the lovely oneness consciousness that reflects the truth that we are all of one being at the end of the day. So the point of all this, of all this violence, all this control, all this ugliness, it was always to separate us from that human consciousness because humans are powerful. I think we forget that. We actually have a lot more power than we think. This is why in Brazil, they didn't want three little kids talking on the side of the street. Because once you start communicating, once you start expanding your
Mhm.
consciousness and your ideas and compounding your light, you become unstoppable and a real pain in the butt to those who would seek to control. So, if I could offer any words of comfort to anyone who is suffering, unsure, scared, um, doesn't know whether the fight's worth carrying on, please believe me, it is. It's actually everything. We have to do this so that the humans never again have to shoulder this burden, fight this fight. We don't want our children doing what we're having to do. Not ever, right? I would do anything to protect my babies from doing what we're having to do right now. And if we don't stop it, no one's going to. There's no magical being going to swoop down and do this for us. It's just us. So now is the time for courage and compassion, and the light will win. I promise you.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. I will add one thing to that, and something that maybe many of us forget to do. Maybe we're just too angry or hurt or sad or thinking of our own mission. One of the things that I have tried to teach my daughter to do every night too is pray for gratitude. There's so much to be grateful for. Pray for wisdom because we are a work in progress. Boy, are we a work in progress. I think, I yelled at her this morning because she took an extra 20 minutes to get ready. And I'm like, I have to work. And I got home and I was like, why did I do that? Like, why did I do that? I felt so bad, like mom guilt, right?
Excuse me.
Again, you go back to that prayer and you think, God, please help me be a better daughter, a better mother, a better friend, a better leader. We have a team. I may not always say the right thing and do the right thing, but my heart is always with you guys. And I always pray to get to that place where I could be a better leader for you all. And then the other thing I pray for is, we are all God's children. And Brianna, you have three. If one of your boys was a bad boy, would you ever stop loving him?
No, and I tell them that all the time. There's nothing that could ever make me stop loving them.
And that's
Never.
the same for God. God looks at all of his children with love and he wants them all to come out through the light. And he knows that some people are lost. Sometimes we feel lost. And I think that it's so important to just look into that, whatever it is that your faith is, whatever it is that your deep spiritual connection is, look into that and ask him to please pray for those people too. Pray for them. They are
Yes.
lost. They are confused. They are brainwashed. They are hurting in ways like you said. They don't even understand the kind of trauma that they have deep down inside, that they are leashing out. Like when we're in pain, when we're hurt, we always tend to be a little bit more aggressive in our conversations or in the way that we respond. And you catch yourself if you're good enough to do that. They're so far gone. So I just ask you all to please pray for them too. They know not what they do. And
Actually, yeah, you know what? You just reminded me of one other thing I would love to say. You're so right about that. And thank you so much for saying it. One of the things I've seen in the wake of what happened yesterday is a knee-jerk reaction to blame a certain political party or a certain group of people or a certain ideology. And I want to remind people that it's not the human beings on the ground. It is the leadership. It is the hand controlling the strings of the puppet. It's even, forgive me, I'm going to be very blunt. This is not even about left versus right. Okay, the political parties in many ways are a distraction from those who are actually in control, who we'll never see on the
yes,
news.
I agree.
You know, they are pulling the strings here. It is in their best interest to create discord between all of us down here on the ground by pointing out perceived differences. And the truth is, none of that is real either. There was a very nasty post this morning blaming essentially the transgender community for what happened. And then 30 seconds later, I saw a
That
post
was going to
from,
happen.
yeah, but then I saw a post from an LGBTQ group condemning what happened and reminding everyone that we are all humans. This is never okay. We need to treat each other with compassion. And I was very moved by that. And so I really want to remind people, do not fall into the trap of blaming a side or a group. That is separation consciousness. That is exactly what they want. And like you said, Michelle, a lot of them are victims in a way. A lot of them are really hurting. Now, of course, we are all responsible for our own trauma. End of
Yes.
story. But not all of us have the same ability to take it on, resolve it, and look it in the face. Because as you and I both know, that is not easy to do. It
No.
takes great courage, great strength, and total dedication. And not everyone is there yet. So we do need to have compassion and love, even for those we perceive as being on a different side of this than we are.
And like our very good friend Mickey Willis said in his post yesterday, you know, what they want to see is division. What they want to see is hate, anger, and they want the civil war. Don't give it to them. Don't give them the emotion. Don't give them the energy. Collective, thoughtful, critical thinking, and lots of love.
Could not have said it better myself.
Thank you. I hope to see you when I come down there. I
Yes,
miss you
Brianna,
guys. I
I
just
miss
adore
you.
you.
I
Please
love
give
you,
your
my
boys
friend.
a big hug for me and give Joe a great big hug for me too. And everyone who's watching this, please come back. This was supposed to be a very different conversation. Please come back and hear our real interview that we're supposed to have with the amazing Brianna Ladapo, all the incredible things that she and Dr. Joe Ladapo have in store for us going into the future, for Florida, hopefully for the nation, maybe even for the world, if you guys can inspire us far enough, especially over here in the true north, strong and not so free in Canada. Um, but I think that there's so much yet to come, and I want to hear about your accomplishment. I think the world needs to hear, you know, what's happening with that, the great woman behind the great leaders. So, love you. Thank you,
Thank
Brianna.
you. I love
Thank
you.
you, everybody. And
Bye.
everybody, we hope that you all enjoy this message and absolutely live well.